on the Nile. Yet another Death on the Nile.
How many do we have?
This would be number 3. It's a moderate amount. This film is, well, it's a British movie, of course, and the Brits have been watching Death on the Nile every year at Christmas since 1990, about 30 years now. If you ask me why Death on the Nile at Christmas, I don't know, goes together with murder and Egypt goes together with Christmas. I don't know.
Maybe it's an anti-Christmas movie. Like,
it's
give me sunshine and pyramids.
Yeah, I think it's just because they had the Murder on the Orient Express on, which is not Christmas but definitely snow. And then they had another afternoon left because you have Christmas Day and you have Boxing Day, so you have 2 days. And then they had a couple of movies, and then that's how it goes. So, and that is actually the problem with this movie, is that everybody else saw that other one from 1978. Everybody saw it. Everybody knows exactly what's in it. And this movie, if you're going to do an Agatha Christie movie, you have to do the plot. If you don't do the plot, it doesn't work. I mean, Agatha Christie is not only about a certain group of people in a certain location doing upper classy things. It's also the plot. You have to do the plot. So they do the plot, but they try to not be that other movie. And it's costing them. Some of the things that other movie had, they can't replicate I'm not quite sure for what reason. The other movie was filmed in Egypt. This one is not. They sent a second unit to Egypt to do some filming, but the actors and stuff like that, they were not in Egypt. And so you have the advantage of having Egypt goes away as such. It's a backdrop. It's a set of scenery. This combined with the fact that Agatha Christie always has so many characters, which all need a certain screen time, which have a potential of becoming visually interesting. But the other movie did a couple of them already, and they had so many famous actors in the other one that this one is struggling for that concept. It has too many characters, and none of who can be featured. They're not featured like They tried to push Poirot forward a little bit. They tried to give him a background story, which he doesn't have. He never has a background story. There's some snippets, and if you check the Wikipedia, they made a sort of a timeline of what we know about him. This movie adds in World War I. In fact, when the movie opened, it starts with a scene in French in the trenches with I think he's a sergeant, Poirot, talking to his captain, Belgian of course, and he's established himself as a farmer. He's there, and they there's some sort of my peanut gallery is looking really.
I don't see Poirot as a farmer, even in his roots.
No, everybody knows that this guy was always a cop. He was a bobby, or the Belgian equivalent of a bobby, before he became a detective, and then something happened, and that's why he left. We don't know what happened, but something happened. And he's a young man in World War I, which obviously he's not in the Death on the Nile is, I believe, written in 1937, and it's set in 1937, and that's roughly 20 years after World War I, and he's 60. Everybody knows Poirot's roughly 50, 60. He was not a young man in World War I. So this thing was so confusing that to the audience, we were sitting quite at the back of the theater, because it was actually opening weekend, and we were got the tickets a little bit on the late side, so we were at the back, which is not my preferred place, but I could see the audience. Somebody in the middle of the scene got up and left. And I, for one moment, thought, am I sure that I opened room 6 and not room 5 to go in? Are we in the right... It was just... It has nothing to do with this movie. And so you're establishing a piece of background that nobody asked for a character who, I mean, yes, Poirot is very important in this movie, but it is about a murder that happened to somebody else, and all these Agatha Christie ones, and that's why Agatha Christie is about the murderer and the murderee, the person who gets murdered, and yes, the sleuth is very important, but that person is not the feature. He or she is the linchpin. And this is why Poirot's bio, she never completed it. And same for Miss Marple's bio. It's not interesting. It's only interesting when either of them meet somebody from the past. So
that would make it Murder, She Wrote.
Yeah, basically.
Where it's better not to be somebody from her past.
and she was...
your fiancé will die.
And basically she's trying to avoid that. And she specifically is looking for these detective types to be personally interesting, but not historically interesting. Not to have their personal history to be historical. Only thing we know about Miss Marple is that she lived in an English village all her life. That is all. And that she went to a really good school, because there were some ladies that she went to school with, or ladies like the ones she would have gone to school with. That is all we know about her, and the same about Fazal. So why add this? I understand it's a centennial celebration, or not celebration, remembrance of World War One. So especially this film is actually mostly filmed in 2020, before 2019, and has been shelved for release later because COVID happened. So this harks back to Centennial of World War One, and I understand that, but it doesn't belong in this movie. This movie is set in the mid-30s, late mid-30s, 1937, almost exactly. It's after the Roaring Twenties are done. And the crash of 29 has happened, and everybody's already used to that. People have moved on. It's 37. We're going towards another war, but they're not quite aware of it yet. So it's a very specific time, and that's what it is about. Basically, Agatha Christie wrote what she knew, and she was traveling at this period in her life. She was traveling around, and she would have been to Egypt at this time, been on a boat like Death on the Nile, the kind of boat they were on. So she knows, and they should have stuck to that. Why add this in? And that's the problem with this movie. Is I understand you want to not be like the other movie, but you're adding in stuff, or changing it, or doing stuff that's not careful with that. So there's a couple of things that I agree with that they changed. I mean, they have you have to go with actors that you have. You have to. There's a couple of actors in here that I recognize that Kenneth Branagh has acted with them before on stage.
And you're saying Brannagh is the
director and producer and the everything on this movie.
So he
plays Poirot.
Oh, now it got a lot more interesting.
Oh yeah, and he plays. I have no issue with that. Other than he is a very different Poirot from what we've seen before, but I can that's not an issue.
Okay, so Brannagh is director, producer, and the lead character. So this is a passion project.
Yes, but it's already number 2. He did Our Murder on the Orient Express as well, which I hope to do a thingy about later. But this one I actually have to see in the movie, so I wanted to talk about this one. So some of the people on the cast are people that sometimes you recognize from British TV. French and Saunders are in this, which is rather cute. Everybody loved that. That's very good. But the lady who plays Salome Otterbourne, and I have to look up the name. And Sophie Okonedo, Okonedo, who is she is a very famous stage actress in England. Occasionally you see her on TV. She was in the 2012 Shakespeare plays. The Hollow Crown, she was in that. She's very good, and they had her play a role that she could play, because there's a couple of young women on board, but there's a couple of older women on board, and she plays Salome Otterbourne, who and they changed her role because the cast of characters of the original book in 1937 is white, and white. So, for reason of casting, I don't know, they have Gadot as Linnet, Gadot, and she's white enough,
Middle Eastern
looking, and to complement that, she has the chap who plays Cousin Andrew. Is definitely Middle Eastern. It's more direction India. So we have Salome Otterbourne, who is now black descendant, and her daughter, who's also black. But in the book, Salome Otterbourne is a very drunk, sleazy novel writer. Sexy novels, the trash. And they went a different route with this. In this, she is a singer of blues. For those who were sitting there going, oh, that sounds really good and very authentic, the blues that is sung in there is 100% authentic. It is mostly Sister Rosetta Tharpe, who was at her top in the 1930s and 40s, so that's contemporary music. All the music that Salome sings is her music, her original music, remastered, but not re-sung or anything like that, it's remastered. So that's wonderful. That's for the color locale, the mood and the stage and stuff like that. It's wonderful. These things are absolutely no problem. One of the stranger things that they changed. Let me go back. When they put in the black characters, they can now put in a subplot of because in the end, this murder is about Linnet get killed, and it turns out everybody who is on board the ship had something against her. So everybody could possibly have murdered her, because that's how these stories go. And in the original, the drunk author had put out a sleazy book, and Linnet had put a stop to it, so stopped her publication basically, and so she was pissed. The question is it enough to kill her? And in this version, the black singer Salome Otterbourne was once turned away. Was more complicated. Basically, she was turned away by a very young Linnet, maybe 9 years old, because she was black. And maybe that's the reason for killing Linnet. So that these things come up, and that's okay, I think. It tells more about how we feel about these matters now, of a person of color or not color, and when they were and where they were, and how how people were looking at them. I did, after this, read the book, and the way they deal with it is completely different. And possibly, I don't know if you have to make a choice. Are you going to make a movie that shows 1937? Or are you going to make a movie that shows some sort of what we think is also part of 1930, what we think it is. But instantly this thing is dated already, because in 20 years we'll feel differently about it. And we'll find that this subplot of the colored family of the Otterbournes – being slighted in that way, and being and thinking that is actually a motive for murder, it's going to be different. And so that's a problematic thing. What I did like was the adding French and Saunders. For those who don't know, that is a bit famous comic duo, and they put them in the space of the elderly lady and her companion, which was a perfectly normal thing in 1937, or even many years before that. And they updated it to be a couple of different means, but together. They were roommates. And yes, they are more than roommates. And that is a good way to do it. It's what he then does is also make the Saunders character, Mrs. van Schuyler, also makes her the godmother of Linnet, which I think is not in the book at all. And why? They're just holiday people thrown together on a boat, so why would she be?
They don't have to be related to each other.
They don't have to be any more related to each other than they have to be. There's a lot of stuff people are on that boat because of Linnet that are in the book. The book has the most plot, of course, because book. But there are a couple of people on that boat that really are there because Linnet is there. For one, Cousin Andrew, who now is in trouble because Linnet married and is going to find out that he's been swindling all her money affairs, and he was trying to get her to sign something before, you know. So not everybody is there for legitimate reasons, and a lot of them turn out to have something to do with Linnet, one way or another. And that's of course a good way for a plot.
Can I get back to the lesbian couple? Is it?
They were roommates!
For 50 years. And they had one main bedroom and a tiny little room for one of the others.
Yeah, and it was always properly dressed and never disturbed.
Yes, they were very neat. No, is it text or is it subtext?
No, it's straight up text.
Oh, awesome!
because and that's a spoiler, but I'm hoping you're going to see it anyway. Because Poirot has to figure out how everything works. Any secret has to come up because somebody got murdered. So this secret comes up. He notices that the bed in the other room still has the hospital corners that's from the first day still on it. So
love it,
yes.
love it. That's also good commentary.
That's the writing on that is fine. That's not a problem. The other thing is that and I don't know how that happened, but in the book there's a character that never made it to that 1978 movie, a young man with a mother, and for some reason they put the young man with the mother in this one, but gave him completely different names. In fact, they gave him the name of a character from the Murder on the Orient Express. And it's going, what? Why? I mean, he's called Tim Allerton in the original book. And now he's called Mr. Book. B-O-U-C. I don't understand. So, why? The subplot that belongs to those characters in the book don't happen in this movie or in the other movie. There's like a couple of sub stories that don't happen in this movie. One thing that I changed, and I think that's actually a good thing, is in the original, and this is a spoiler, sorry, but everybody's seen the other movie, so it's in that. There are 3 murders, and they're all women. And in this one, Salome Otterbourne does not get killed. Here, somebody else gets killed. A male gets killed, and that means that in murder, we know the statistics of actual murder. Men commit them, and women get killed, and that's very sad. So changing that up is not a bad idea in this case. It does.
You're still looking at 2-1, two women dead, one male dead.
Yeah. It's at least it's a little bit more equal. And it doesn't really matter if it's if this male murder is a male or a female. So the fact that the murder happened is more important. But it leaves Salome Otterbourne open for Salome Otterbourne, who is now a jazz singer, a person who you actually can talk to. And there is actually a scene in here of Poirot and Salome, who are roughly the same age, talking. And the whole thing ends with him, once they've gone on shore, visiting her club and listening to her sing. So, the talk that they have is actually very interesting. They talk actually, I think, before the very first murder happens. Everybody's on holiday. They're talking about the future, and one of the things I think he says that he says something about wanting to grow marrows retire and grow marrows and pumpkin kind of things. That's what they are. And this is actually what he does in one of the other books in The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. So maybe, hopefully, that is one that Kenneth Branagh is going to be doing. I think that's the plan. So he gave Poirot a past, and he's giving Poirot a future in a retirement and a possible lady friend. So that is very interesting. Overall, I think the film is worth seeing. It's not the best of the versions. It's an okay film.
Visually, how was it?
Visually, it was wonderful. They didn't go to Egypt, like I said, but they all the other scenery and the costumes are wonderful. The actors are really good. They're not as wonderful as the other film, because Mia Farrow, Betty Davis, it's very hard to top. So there's not that, but the production is wonderful. I think they spent the money well. The only thing is, I think maybe it's a little bit on the short side, and they could have done some of the human interaction scenes a little longer. But that's not the style right now. Right now is go fast, and lots of visuals. So that's wonderful. I have to show some of the Egyptian temples. They go to Karnak and to Abu Simbel, all fake in this version, of course, and the pyramids, and it's beautiful. So that seems to be never an issue nowadays. The films aren't ugly anymore.
Even without going there with the cast to film, they still manage to do that.
Yeah, with the way they have CGI, I'm sure that they some of the visuals of the boat going up the Nile have been definitely second unit filming Nile and then putting in a boat, or even actually having a boat there. It's just that the sun-kissed way that the other one was, the way you could see that Mia Farrow comes into a temple, and her skin is hot, and that was not in this movie. Can't be in this movie, not like that. So it is a bit more plastic than the other one, and it's going to get compared to keeps getting compared to the other one, because if you choose to do a film like that, you're going to get compared to the most famous thing ever. So,
what's your opinion?
Yeah, it's worth seeing. It's not a waste of your 2 hours and 4 minutes. So, I don't know. Can you ask more for that than that? You would want it to be absolutely wonderfully brilliant. They did the story. They did it properly. There were a couple of times where I said, "Oh, that could have been a little bit clearer." But that's fine.
But did they hit the beloved points that you want out of this story?
You want the murder. You want the murder scene happening, because it happened on that boat, and then you want a Poirot to go over it in the right way to come to the right conclusion, and he did that. That he facts that he actually has to draw a gun on somebody, that's a sort of a little bit more Wild West than I would like Poirot to be. But if you make his history that he's actually a soldier or has been a soldier in World War One, okay, you
I was just thinking Belgian cowboy, and I just can't envision it at all.
The moustaches. They gave him the whole backstory with the lady he lost in the war and all that kind of thing. And you know what? It doesn't need it. It really doesn't need it. I think on that point they wasted their time. It was very pretty, by the way. I loved the fashions that the lady in the war wore, because they are correct. I loved the fashions that they were in the 1937 sequence of the film. As far as I could tell, most of this stuff is very much correct. The hairstyles were pretty good. Could have been... it's very stylized. Hairstyles 37 is still with very stylized ringlets, which they didn't do quite as much, but they did. The dresses were very nice. The locations where they are, that boat is very nice. The hotel they are before that is also very nice. Did show the opulence of that time, and yeah.
Because these were the rich. These were the absolute rich people.
Yes, the rich people, basically, yes. Going to the colonial places, basically. Still in 37, it's still colonial. Yeah. So, yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
And that's your opinion.
And I'm sticking to it.